Welcome to Innovating Clinical Trials, the podcast designed for clinical research professionals eager to deepen their understanding of clinical trials through concise, insightful segments. Join your hosts, Eves and Ted Trafford, as they uncover the core issues in clinical research, reflect on the industry, and challenge conventional wisdom.
Our inaugural guest is Joel White, founder of Marketcap Consulting and a veteran in the clinical research industry. He's got over 17 years of experience. Joel specializes in boosting financial performance and strategic execution for businesses. He has enormous experience in the CRO space. Joel, I'm going to say, is our clinical trial finance guru and CRO whisperer.
I love it. So what we're going to talk about in these next sections is going to be really around the Q2 2024 earnings recap. And we're going to dive deep into this one and going to cover a lot of information and a lot of nuances. So we're looking forward to speaking to Joel about it.
Yeah, let's get it going. So one of the things that you talk about in the report is the late phase book to bills for some of the CROs. Let's dig into that and first explain what it means and why it's important.
Okay, book to bill. So it is a fraction with bookings on top. That's the book, and then revenue on the bottom. That's the bill. Like I guess the proper way, it's book to bill is what everybody calls it. The plain language of it would be bookings to revenue.
Yeah,
the fraction. And so what it is, it's a fraction that says how much new business did you book in a particular time period, usually a quarter, sometimes trailing 12 months. How much new business, go forward business did you book compared to the amount of revenue that you actually earned that quarter or that year? And that's incredibly important because the higher that fraction, that means that you are signing up new business in excess of the revenue that you're generating, i.e., you're going to grow your revenue over time. So typically these fractions are 1.0, 1.1, 1.2. We're not talking 2s and 3s and 5s here. And it's typically a CRO metric. We'll get into a little nuance with this on the site side and how it really got a company in trouble. We've actually talked about earlier this call. But you see 1.2s, 1.3s, 1.1s, things like that. So when you see a 1.2, which is kind of for as long as I've been in the industry, like if you're a CRO and you're getting a 1.2 book to bill, then that's a good thing. That means that your new business bookings in a particular quarter or year are about 20% larger than the revenue you recognize. And if your book to bill is at least 1.2 or higher on a consistent basis, then you should be able to grow your revenue into the future at 5 to 10%, maybe even higher in future years. And that's ultimately good for a CRO. Because a CRO that can grow its revenue 5 to 10% or more annually, usually CROs are able to increase their actual net profit at a multiple of that revenue increase. So if you're growing you're seeing this
right.
CROs as we speak. If Icon is a master at turning a 5% revenue growth into 15 or 20 or 25% net income growth. Of course, it works the other way. If your revenue goes down, your profit rapidly decreases. We saw it with Syneos a couple years ago. We're seeing it with Fortrea today. So that's why the net book to bill matters. In any one single individual quarter, you could have a really bad result, but as long as you rebound by the next quarter and keep that book to bill healthy, then you're in a good situation. What stood out to me this quarter with a couple CROs is, Fortrea's book to bill slid under 1.0, 0.96. That means they actually booked less new business in the quarter than they earned in revenue. So every CRO has a backlog of all the contracts they've signed, and in those contracts, all the revenue they have not yet recognized. That's their backlog. And so if your book to bill is under 1, that means your backlog shrink that quarter. That means like the well of future revenue that you could tap from has shrunken, which is like the worst case scenario for any CRO. And if they just had that happen in one quarter and rebounded next, it's okay. But when you start to stack multiple quarters and then you say the next quarter's not looking so good, then you start having a more serious issue. This was the downward spiral for Syneos starting in late 2021 throughout the remainder of 2022 that forced them to go private at a really low valuation. We talked about the trends. The trend's your friend, right? They had a nice book to bill during the easy days of COVID, and then it started to bend. Oh, everything's fine. We're going to rebound. We're going to rebound. Never rebounded. It just kept going down, and then they're private now, so we don't know when it bottomed out, but we'll see.
Right.
I in the previous quarterly recap, I noticed that MedPace, after numerous quarters of strong above 1.2 book to bills, that trend started to come down. Came down to 1.20 again, in and of itself, not bad, and then it dropped to 1.04 in the last quarter. And so, this is an audio podcast. I can't show the visual; it's in the quarterly report, but I showed the trend. You could see the trend heading down, and they said that, hey, in third quarter, 1.2 is not really in the cards. So it's when you start stacking these multiple quarters with of poor sales performance, that's where you start getting concerned, because that means that you're really squeezing your ability to grow future revenues. If Icon and IQVIA were running into the same issue, then I would say we have an industry issue. But their numbers are super strong, super healthy, and we'll have to see where it goes from here. But that's what's important about a book to bill. That fraction is a huge determinant in what becomes your future revenue growth.
Joel, in terms of, we've spoken about the macros, we've spoken about the areas that you're bullish about. When you're looking Q2 and past quarters, are there any trends that you're concerned about that you're seeing?
Yeah, trends I'd say I'm concerned about. I am concerned that two of the larger CROs are certainly slipping on the sales performance side, and have said that at least the next quarter, if not the next 2 quarters, are going to be very difficult. We're recording this in early September 2024, so we'll see Q3 results in about a month and a half, and then, guys, Q4 starts in a month, which is ridiculous. So if these companies are able to rebound faster than expected, that's certainly a positive. But they continue to struggle, and then even more importantly, if IQVIA and Icon follow behind them, then that's going to start making me pretty pessimistic on the CRO side. On the preclinical side, I'll just be looking for a bottom. Not from a stock price standpoint. I'm talking more macro than that. But some of these companies are close to trading in the penny stock range. Yeah. So you're going to start seeing some of the preclinical players go out of business. Yeah. I'll be very curious to see how that plays out. But I'm generally optimistic because of the pipeline information we talked about earlier. Some of the numbers on biotech funding are still very strong.
Yeah, what are you seeing? What are you seeing there, Joel? What are you seeing in the biotech?
Yeah, extremely strong numbers this year, even compared to last year. And last year wasn't really that bad from a long-term standpoint. First half of the year was up, depending on the source you read, 20, 30, or 50%. That takes time to play into backlogs, but that's what makes me think, very generally, broadly speaking, that I would expect to see a rebound in some of these players towards the end of the year if those biotech numbers really come in for real. But what I'm seeing right now, it does make me optimistic, but I still need to see the actual results play out quarter by quarter, for me to stay confident in that. And then, on the site side, again, we don't have, much publicly available information, but when do Icon and IQVIA pull the trigger and acquire these site networks? Because they said they're going to. They've got huge M&A war chests that they're ready to use, that their shareholders are expecting them to put to use. They've been saying for the past couple quarters that valuations are too high right now. They've been prohibited towards large-scale acquisitions. Well, who blinks first? Right? Who blinks first? And I had put in the quarterly recap that part of me wonders if we are starting to see some performance slipping on the site side, revenue growth, things like that. I don't have any secret information to share on that to know. It just makes me wonder if there's some disconnect between the valuations that their targets are asking for compared to their latest performance numbers. We'll see.
I know that coming out of COVID, the valuations were getting pretty crazy because everyone was banking on the volumes that they were doing through COVID,
right?
As to carry
the
on.
Vaccine work was
exactly.
Yeah.
Yep. Because there's been this debate over the years of whether preclinical and early clinical spend predetermines what later phase spend will be. I've never been a big believer in that, and if anything, the past year has further made me not a believer in that. But what is definitely true is that when CROs are suffering, sites will suffer.
Yeah,
because that is a direct correlation of revenue.
Interesting.
Yeah. So so if you see some of these CROs slipping in their performance numbers, that tells me that some of these sites, especially some of these sites, are overly concentrated in certain types of trials.
Right.
Could be struggling as well, but still anchored to the valuation they expected when they were at the very top.
So one of the big news stories that you present in your report was the Walgreens BARDA award. So yeah, love to hear from you on this and learn, what is this all about and what it means.
Yeah, and I actually shortchanged that announcement a little bit because in prior reports, I always try to put a slide in there around decentralized trials, DCTs. And because the prior 2 quarters I had written, there was no news on DCT, I'm like, how long am I going to keep doing this? Right?
Yeah.
And this would have actually been the quarter to bring it back because the Walgreens BARDA award, BARDA, for anyone not knowing, it's a division or sub-agency within the NIH. And to my knowledge, is probably the number one source of federal government spend on clinical research. And not all CROs, in fact, relatively few CROs participate in government-funded clinical research.
Right.
But this BARDA award, it's shared between Walgreens, Lucent, and then Care Access, one of the 2 components of Reify, which is a large DC specific company. This BARDA award, it's up to $100 million over 5 years, and it's in addition to a $20 to $25 million observational phase 4 trial that Walgreens is going to run for BARDA through 20 of its pharmacies, which I thought was fascinating. You add that up, that's $120 million worth of backlog for Walgreens just from these awards. Walgreens has a decent amount of other business, and that's a tiny drop in the bucket for Walgreens as a corporation, but that would put them pretty well up in the rankings of CROs on a backlog basis. BARDA awards can be finicky in terms of how much you actually of that 100 million, they'll actually realize, and it is over 5 years.
Right.
But I put it's significant in a couple ways. One, it's a big win for DCT in the industry, and the announcements are very vague in terms of what it actually accomplishes. So I can't say, hey, here's the 3 components of DCT that it's going to operationalize.
Right.
But one of the main missions of BARDA is preparedness in clinical research. So they do a lot of proactive type of clinical research network setup. So that way, when disaster does strike, when a certain type of outbreak does strike, they've got a network up and ready to go almost immediately to perform research. And so this is, to the best of my knowledge, this is adding a DCT extension in addition to their physical infrastructure that they have, to have that preparedness. Yeah, so it's pretty significant. The other thing that stood out to me is, you see a lot of comments and questions about, well, is Walgreens going to follow the path of CVS and shut down its clinical research unit? And this is a little bit of like, burning the ships behind you to me, right? Where you don't sign up to $100 million commitment with the federal government and then back out in a year,
right?
Especially when the federal government is probably one of your top customers on the other side of their business, on the payer side, the Medicare side. So it represents a huge commitment to me to clinical research, both this and their observational study award, and it involves 20 of their pharmacies. The observational piece does. So I just you never know. There could be an announcement tomorrow that makes everything I say right now completely untrue. But I look for things like that to say, is Walgreens serious about clinical research? Yeah.
Appears so.
Yep. And I contrasted it to Kroger, which fun fact, was my very first employer at age 16, but also based here in Ohio, where I'm based, where a year and a half ago, they announced a clinical trial site network of 2 of their pharmacies, and it's still 2. And there's only a couple trials listed on their website. One of those was in the original press release from a year and a half ago, and the other one might have been the more vaguely referenced second one in that original press release. And then you look at Walmart, where I can't figure out what the hell they're trying to do. It's just incredibly vague. You just see LinkedIn pictures of some management people showing up at some place and saying, "Hey, we're in clinical research." So it's hard to tell, but Walgreens looks like it's continuing to really trying to make this thing work. How are they different from CVS? I only have vague specifics on this, but there were some difference and I don't know if conflicts of interest is the right term, but there were some issues that CVS was really butting up against corporately with some of their other businesses that just made it maybe not impossible, but very difficult to continue moving that business forward in CVS. CVS was racking up some huge awards. And so that was huge awards from a clinical research perspective, not from a CVS, hundreds of billions of dollars company perspective.
It's all relative.
Yeah. But the BARDA award, significant. That's not something you could sign up and then just walk away from because, hey, we're shutting down that business.
And Joel, last question before we sign off for this series is, are there any points or questions that we have missed that you think would be useful to add?
No, I think we had a pretty good overview. Of course, you asked me that, and no, I can't think of anything in particular. I just think that there's always a lot going on in this industry now more than ever. And I'm really eager to see some huge announcements in the coming months, especially around the site network side.
Yeah.
And I think the highest probability of that would be acquisitions.
Mm-hmm.
But man, there are 1 or 2 very large site networks out there that
could do it.
I desperately want to see them IPO. They're not a site network, but WCG, they filed an S1 a couple years ago, ended up not going through with it. Market was in turmoil. That made me sad. We need more players in the industry on the service and tech side going public. And I think they would be rewarded for doing so if Tempus AI, the newest company I follow, is any guide, who doubled within a few months of going public. And they bleed money. They're far from profitable.
Interesting.
Cool. Well, excellent. Thank you so much, Joel. And hopefully we can get you back on again to do Q3, which will not be long away.
Yeah, this has been wonderful. Thanks so much,
Joel.
Joel.
For doing this. You're welcome.
Thanks, Joel. Take care.